What's going on? Maybe if I... There we go. Hey, this is Matt with sowcincy. Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. We're going to be here in Romans 13. And as I was reading Romans 13, I found that it's a little bit of a doozy. Kind of opposite from how I feel about Romans 12. But that's okay. We'll talk about it. So, yeah, let's just go ahead and get right into it. Sound good? Yeah. So here we go. Again, this is Romans. And I knew it was going to be it. I was going to switch over. I knew it wasn't going to be ready. There we go. All right. I hope everyone's having a great Wednesday night. Let's go ahead and begin. All right. So this says, Romans 13. Everyone must submit to governing authorities, for all authority comes from God, and those in positions of authority have been placed there by God. So anyone who rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and they will be punished. For the authorities do not strike in fear. People do not strike fear in people who are doing right, but in those who are doing wrong. Would you like to live without fear of the authorities? Do what is right, and they will honor you. The authorities are God's servants sent for your good. But if you are doing wrong, of course you should be afraid, for they have the power to punish you. They are God's servants sent for the very purpose of punishing those who do what is wrong. So you must submit to them, not only to avoid punishment, but also to keep a clear conscience. Sorry about that, it was a little loud. Pay your taxes too, for these same reasons. For government workers need to be paid. They are serving God in what they do. Give to everyone what you owe them. Pay your taxes and government fees to those who collect them, and give respect and honor to those who are in authority. Owe nothing to anyone except for your obligation to love one another. If you love your neighbor, you will fulfill the requirements of God's law. For the commandments say, you must not commit adultery, you must not murder, you must not steal, you must not covet. These and other such commandments are summed up in this one commandment: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to others, and so love fulfills the requirements of God's law. This is all the more urgent, for you know how late it is. Time is running out. Wake up, for our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is almost gone. The day of salvation will soon be here. So remove your dark deeds like dirty clothes and put on the shining armor of right living. Because we belong to the day, we must live decent lives for all to see. Don't participate in the darkness of wild parties and drunkenness, or in sexual promiscuity and immoral living, or in quarreling and jealousy. Instead, clothe yourself with the presence of the Lord Jesus Christ, and don't let yourself think about ways to indulge in your evil desires. And that, my friends, is Romans 13. Now, when I see something like Romans 13, I get like a lot of questions. I get a lot of questions. So, question number one, and I think everyone will have this question because it's the logical question to ask. What happens when you disagree politically with the current ruling class? So, if you are if you consider yourself like a Democrat, how does Romans 13 apply to your life? When Republicans are in charge, if you're a Republican, how does Romans 13 apply when Democrats are in charge, and vice versa? And so Paul simply puts right there in Romans 1 or Romans 13 verse 1, everyone, doesn't matter who you are, everyone must submit to governing authorities. And you got to ask the question, well, what's submit mean? Well, follow the rules, follow the laws. Let's see. What does it tell you to do? It tells you that they're servants. It says pay your taxes too. It says pay your fees, give them what you owe, honor them, do what is right, All those things. All those are part of submitting to government authorities. It's pretty straightforward. So when someone you don't like is in charge, whether it be a mayor, whether it be a vice mayor, whether it be a police force, whether it be who else? Some politicians, whether it be a president, a senator, a state senator, a representative in the House, all these things, all these individuals, you have to submit to. Why? Because all authority comes from God, and those in positions of authority have been placed there by God. Now, you might be thinking, but they're corrupt, but they're evil. Where was Paul writing Romans from? Babe, you in there? Where was Paul writing Romans from? Was he in prison? Paul might have been in prison. I'd ask the resident theologian of the Jacobs household in Cincinnati. But Paul most likely probably wrote this in prison under Roman rule. Roman rule was, I don't know, Caesar, one of the Caesars. It was also, when they read this, could have been Nero. Might have been. A little bit later. And do we know what Nero did? What did Nero do to Christians? Let's Google that. He burnt them up. The persecution, this is history skills from the internet. So take the internet with a grain of salt. But from historyskills.com, Nero's reign of terror, how Christians became scapegoats for Rome's problems. Nero, the infamous Roman emperor who ruled from 54 to 68 CE, what's that? Common Era? We don't do that. AD is notorious for his persecution of Christians. Nero's reign was characterized by political turmoil, economic instability, and widespread social unrest. During this time, Christianity was still new and growing, and followers were often viewed with suspicion and hostility by the Roman authorities. Nero's persecution of Christians was a significant turning point in the early history of Christianity and had a profound impact on the development of the religion. So there you go. So it wasn't very friendly. So when we think that, like, oh, my rights are being taken away and blah blah, what rights? What rights are we having taken away as a Christian in living in 2023 America? Like, it's an absurd claim to think about. Life is no different. It's a little bit more expensive, but for the most part, life's no different from 2023. As far as I'm concerned, from 2023 to 2015 to 2008 to 2003. As long as I've been an adult, well, I've been an adult since 2005. Technically, it's when I turned 18. But life has generally been the same. Like, it hasn't been difficult. It hasn't been challenging. It hasn't been tumultuous in the grand scheme of things. And it's like this, like the world's gonna end. It is the weirdest. Let's see what she said. Kristen just texted me. Where are the prison epistles? Okay, so he wasn't in prison, according to this. The prison epistles were Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon. Philemon or Philemon? Either way. So correction, fact check, fake news. Paul was not in prison when he wrote Romans, and Rome was not friendly to the Christians. So there you go. So when you see something like Romans 13, you got to ask yourself, how can I honor? How can I submit? How can I give appreciation to, I guess, to governing authorities? Because the opposite side to it is anyone who rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted. And it says, for the authorities do not strike fear in people who are doing right, but in those who are doing wrong. So why are you fearing authorities? If you're not doing what is wrong, why fear the authorities? That would be a question to ask. Would you like to live without fear of the authorities? Do what is right and they will honor you. That's Bible right there. Wrong one. There we go. We'll highlight that blue. The authorities do not strike fear in people who are doing right, but in those who are doing wrong. Would you like to live without fear of the authorities? Do what is right and they'll honor you. Now, are there people who don't do what is right with the authorities? Absolutely. Are there people in authority who are corrupt? Yes. Those are also true. But I'm not sure how often the average person deals with corrupt authorities on a day-to-day basis. Maybe some more than others. I don't know. But if you are dealing with that, I'd move. That's what I would do. But anyways, what are some other truths in Romans 13? Because you know which one I don't like. I don't like verse 6. Pay your taxes. I'm kidding. That's a joke for, government reasons. It's a joke. All right. I like verse 8. Owe nothing to anyone except for the obligation to love one another. If you love your neighbor, you will fulfill the requirements of God's law. And then they often ask, well, because I think back into when Jesus said this, to love your neighbor, he asked, well, who is my neighbor? And it's like, do you love your legitimate, actual, next door neighbor? I'm pointing to our neighbor's house right there. We have a neighbor here. We have a neighbor on the other side. We have a neighbor here. Well, two here, technically. We have the people that live at the bottom, people at the top, a neighbor here, and then a neighbor on the backside. And then we have our upstairs neighbor. So in that little span, we have 6, 7 neighbors. Do I love them? As Romans 13 says, owe nothing to anyone except for your obligation to love one another. If you love your neighbor, you will fulfill the requirements of God's law. Now, obviously, neighbor was a bigger expression, but even if you kept it simple, the neighbor in 2023, your neighbor is the person you live directly next to. Now, could you live out in the country, out on the farm, and you ain't got a neighbor for miles and miles and miles? Probably, but that's technically still your neighbor. So you should love them. And then it goes into a bunch of what the commandments say. Starting at verse 9, but verse 10 says, love does no wrong to others, so love fulfills the requirements of God's law. Of anything, everything, love other people, especially in these times. It's weird. We live in weird times. There's not really anything happening here, at least for us in Cincinnati, Ohio. There's not really anything happening here. It's pretty peaceful times. But across the world, there is turmoil and all those things. And so what's fascinating, this is what we learned, is that there is the Jewish Christian church and the Palestinian Christian church, and they have found unity and love with one another. People who should, by all metrics, be hating one another, and yet they, from what we heard from the stories, that they love one another and they're united. in the midst of everything going on, whether it's, war, threats of war, violence, protest, riots, bombings, all those sorts of things. Like, all this stuff is going on, and yet there's this group of people who see beyond their ethnic and national demographics, and they look to a higher power in the name of Jesus Christ, and they love one another, even though they are, like, completely not supposed to. Like, we see this same idea in John 4. Is it John 4, the woman at the well? Where she's a Samaritan woman. I think it's John 4. She's a Samaritan woman. And she even says, like, you're not supposed to talk to me. Like, you're a Jew. I'm a Samaritan. You're not supposed to talk to me. And yet, because of, now this was Jesus talking, because of what he had for her, he wanted to show her love. So he gave her something that was everlasting, which then she went and spoke to her tribe, and they came and heard of this everlasting gift. And even then, and I think I could be misreading it wrong. I might be not misremembering wrong. I think even the apostles were like, "What are you doing with this person?" I could totally be wrong. I could look it up, which I think I will right now. Let me look it up real quick. That was John 4. I think they made a comment, but I could be 120% wrong. Come on, give me John 4. Click. There we go. Let's see. Just verse 27. Just then his disciples came back. They were shocked to find him talking to a woman, but none of them had the nerve to ask, "What do you want with her?" or "Why are you talking to her?" Okay, so that's what was going on. So they weren't saying it. I don't know if this was like they were thinking it. But it should be noted that those two questions are interesting to note. So it might have been, for this particular gospel passage that it might have been a significant thing, because the thing was, like, the Samaritans and the Jews weren't supposed to be together. Like, if you go back up to verse 9. The woman was surprised, for Jews refused to have anything to do with Samaritans. She said to Jesus, "You are a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink?" So even right there scripturally, in that one, John 4, that's like a good representation. But that was then, and this is now 2023. But the story goes is that the Jewish Christians and the Palestinian Christians over there in Israel and Iraq and Gaza and all that, like, even though they're going under all this stuff, which is like, I'm veering off track from Romans 13, but it's interesting. My point is, it'd be interesting to see what does Romans 13 look like in a context like that. Like, we don't really understand the passage. If you really think, if you're really honest, we don't really get Romans 13 because we don't. It's not our cultural context. Like, you ask a Christian from North Korea, like, would you mind having a governing authority that you don't like, you can speak freely against? I'm sure they would trade you for I'm sure they'd probably trade you for the world. And so, it, like, Romans 13, I see this as almost like a suffering passage, and I just don't think we truly understand what it means to suffer, because we do live comfortably, and I can freely talk on a YouTube live stream about Christianity to our viewers and whoever will watch this. And there's no threat. There's no threat. But let's go back to Romans 13, because there was one last piece that I wanted to hit as we wrap this up. And so, speaking of everything that's going on, and people are saying that this is, World War III and this is the end times. I did find this a little interesting. Verse 11, this is all the more urgent for you know how late it is. Time is running out. Wake up, for our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is almost gone. The day of salvation will soon be here. So remove your dark deeds like dirty clothes. Put on the shining armor of right living. Because we belong to the day, we must live decent lives for all to see. And so I don't really know what this means. I think it's, it's a little, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little, not poetic. I don't know what the word is. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but it's referring to what is to come. And so people are saying like there's probably some significance to the events taking place today, across the world. Is it, am I going to say, oh yeah, Jesus is absolutely coming back? No, because I honestly don't know and don't really care. When he comes, and that's cool. What I do care about is that we should probably do what it says there, that this is the time to get your house in order, as the author Jordan Peterson would say, that it's a time not get your house in order because it's what you should do and life is chaotic, because Jesus will come back soon, and your salvation, what happens in your heart and when you speak it, should be evident in the lives to those around you. So we'll wrap up Romans 13 there. I hope you guys have a good evening. We're going to be in Romans 14. It's a little loud in my ears. We'll be in Romans 14 tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. We'll be in Romans 14 on Friday. We'll wrap up Romans on Sunday. So we'll go Romans 14, 15, and 16 on the weekend. And then next Monday, we'll start up the Bible department. So it'll be, the sowcincy channel will be strictly just like I said, just videos, but the podcast page will be these streams that we do, and it'll be 2 streams a week. It'll be a stream on either Monday or Tuesday. Most likely Tuesday will be the stream, and then the second stream will be Friday. So my plan, and I'll talk more about this maybe on Friday, but my plan is to have the verse that we go over, that will have the questions and stuff, and it'll just be like a hey, here's what we want you to think about on for Friday that we'll discuss live, Kristen and I. And so it'll just be kind of very, very simple, very easy, just a simple reading, things like that. And then Friday we'll talk about more. We'll get more into this, the verse itself is what I'm trying to say. So that'll be happening. So we'll go down to 2 nights a week. And then there'll be a video, I think every Wednesday. I'm going to try to get a video out. That's what I would like to do. That's going to talk more about evangelism. And so we're just going to hit I think I found 7 or 8 evangelism tools, skills that will show that you can use and things like that. We'll talk about that. So thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate it. If you like what you saw, please subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time. Love you. Have a good one.